Welcome to the How They Did It podcast. I'm here with Dr. Pak. If I would say his full name, but it would take up the whole podcast. I'm just joking. So it's Dr. Patroklos Androulakis-Korakakis. And we just met each other now, but we have a bunch of common people that we know from Greece, which is pretty crazy. I became a big fan of Dr. Pak's work. I read a bunch of his studies. He works a lot with the guys from RP Strength, and you can watch him on Instagram, YouTube. He has the minimum dose effective for 1 rep max strength. That study like changed the way I trained for strength training. He's a very interesting guy. I'm very excited to have him here. Dr. Pat, thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, as most Greeks, we have a lot of things in common, and a lot of people we know, although we've never spoken before, which is interesting and somewhat connected by the infamous Greek hip hop scene.
Yeah, crazy enough. Crazy enough. So I'm going to start off here. I got a couple questions. I want you to tell us. So you're a PhD. That's why I'm calling you. That's why I called him doctor. So he's a PhD. You are you work as an online trainer as well. You're a researcher. Give us a little bit of your backstory. I know you're in London right now. Tell me how you came from Greece to London. What motivated you to get your PhD? Give me a little backstory.
For sure. So I am I'm from Greece, as you said, fully Greek. Grew up in Athens up until the age of 12. Left Athens, went to Germany for around 6 years, and then in 2013 moved to Southampton, UK, which I'm currently at. I got into lifting when I was 16, and then because I was like somewhat lost in terms of my direction, I was like, wait, maybe I should do something lifting related. As somebody who loves geeking out with whatever I do, so I used to be a big computer geek. When I started getting into lifting, I was like, let's see what's the best way for me to approach my training. Let's read a bit more about nutrition. Let's see how we can identify the best sources of information here and apply critical thinking. And that's where I sort of got exposed to evidence-based fitness, while at the same time I was at university, where I got taught how to just because a paper says this or you hear people say that, you must be critical and you must take that information, see if it's actually true, what data is there to support it, what quality is the data that people are presenting as data supported, and so on and so forth. And as I was doing my undergrad, I started enjoying research when I did my dissertation, and I met my then supervisor, James Steele, the infamous Dr. James Steele from Solon University. Really cool guy and one of my mentor for sure, at least for quite a while. And I started doing research on the side and teaching after I finished my undergrad degree. And because I had started publishing papers, just a couple of papers, obviously, around strength sports and just strength training in general, that allowed me to then get into a PhD directly, because they sort of filled the void of a master's, because I had published like a few papers, which you could essentially count like as a master's dissertation. And then I decided to do my PhD on the minimum effective training dose, essentially what's the least one can do and still see meaningful strength increases. That was that started at some point in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, and I finished towards the summer of 2021. And at the moment, I'm an online coach for Stronger by Science. I am the chief editor for Reps Research Review. Have my own company along with friend and colleague Milo Wolf, MyoAdapt, which is essentially a coaching app, which will be launching at some point in the near future. It's been in the works for a couple of years now. And yeah, I make memes, have a YouTube channel, and just like an educator. I like to educate people about lifting and making lifting more accessible to those that may not find it super easy to get into.
Well, that's fantastic. I have a question from actually just from a fellow workout geek. perspective. The When you talk about minimum effective volume, I actually struggle with this. So, as people that listen to my podcast know, I'm what I call a trainer on retainer. I work for two clients. I travel around the world. My schedule is very compact, and I don't really know how much time I have when I train. So I have some strategies to try to maximize whatever efforts I can in the gym. Uh, but sometimes I do feel like, man, maybe I'm not getting enough to make significant gains. Can you give me what is the general guidelines for the minimum effective dose?
Yeah, for sure. So I think if we want to make it super simple, and I'd say that this covers more or less covers, right? Like, don't take my answers with a slight pinch of salt. But as far as hypertrophy and strength, if you're doing around a handful of sets, either per muscle group or per exercise per week. So per exercise per week would be mostly for strength. Let's say you have some exercises that you want to just get strong at. And for muscle growth, we're looking at just muscle groups per week. So if you're doing around a handful of sets per muscle group or per exercise per week, and those sets are at a relatively high intensity of effort, obviously for strength you'd need to prioritize lifting heavier weights. But for hypertrophy, you could lift light weights, moderate weights, whatever you like. As long as you're getting those sets close to failure, very close to failure, from a muscle growth perspective, you'd definitely be covered. So let's say your biceps, you could go in on Monday, do 2 sets of preacher curl with an easy bar, take those sets to the point where you're like, okay, I can't do any more reps, and then go on Friday and do 3 sets of dumbbell curls, and that would be more than enough for you to not just maintain, obviously, but to actually see meaningful progress. Obviously, like, it's likely that you'd see meaningful progress. I'm not saying it with 100% certainty, but still, I'd be pretty confident that you'd make gains over time, assuming, that you're not a bodybuilder who's been training for 45 years and has absolutely reached their peak.
Kind of turn this question on its head for you. From the opposite viewpoint, is it I know it's not exactly what you studied, but for the actual maximum effective volume of how you could do, if you're getting meaningful results from a handful of sets per week, is I know that the recent study there's like 52 sets they did was the upper limit. Do you see that being the general case, or was that do you think that study was just that they weren't going completely to failure? Or is it just a balance of intensity?
Yeah. So like with that study, I think people were very quick to lose their minds when in reality, like those that really know, just looked at that study and said, "That's interesting," and then continued with their day, and not much really changed as far as their volume recommendations go, because that study was not 52 sets for 12 weeks. It was they all started at 22 sets, and every couple of weeks they added sets, and one group ended up doing 52 sets of just quads by the end of the study. Um, I do think that like we have to see. This is where people's logic sort of fails, in my opinion, or maybe I am the crazy one. The way I look at these studies and these recommendations is from a maximization slash optimization lens. So like if we're talking about you wanting to get jacked and strong, and I'm talking like impressively jacked and strong, where you can walk into an establishment, as long as it's not like a Mr. Olympia sort of press conference, you can walk in a room, and people will be like, "Oh, this guy's jacked." Or you can walk in a commercial gym, and you can lift some number, like you can lift weights that people will be like, "Okay, that's a strong guy." Again, for just general stuff. I think you can do that simply by not focusing on any sort of detail. Like you could just lift hard 3 to 5 times a week. Make sure you're hitting around 10 sets per muscle group per week, and it's likely that you're going to get there, assuming nutrition and recovery are on point. But the way I like to see data like the 52 set study is, let's say I had 2 clones of you, and I had to make a bet on. Actually, let me take the bad example a couple of steps back and remake it. Let's say it was you and I, we're friends, and we have two twins, and we're like, okay, I'm gonna bet on twin A, and you're gonna bet on twin B for whoever gets more jacked over time, and like a lot is at stake here. Would you or would you not be like, okay, let's just do, based on the current evidence, let's just do more than what seems to be like fine, like let's just do more volume than what seems to be almost close to maximizing gains, just to make sure that you're getting as jacked as humanly possible. So like in that scenario, I'd be like, hey, if we can push sets for certain muscle groups, if you're recovering enough, and we can do 35 sets for arms, because there's so much hanging, like we've made this bet and there's a lot of money on the line, I'd rather you do a bit more, and for it not to make a difference, and take that sort of educated bet, versus being, slightly more conservative. And that's the angle that I think a lot of people should view this data. Like when we're talking about maximizing hypertrophy, we are strength and training geeks at the end of the day. We are looking at like minor details that may make a difference for a select population. Overall, yeah, bro, like it's not like getting jacked is not rocket science, but constantly trying to go back to, oh, it's simple, why are you guys complicating it, kind of defeats the point of optimization. Similarly with other hobbies, like if you have a petrol head who's into cars, yes, a car will be fast. Like you can have a car that is stock and it will be super fast, and the slight adjustments may not make a difference to the average person who wants to just, drive a bit faster on the motorway. But like for somebody who's like dedicated to like racing, it may make a difference. Does that make sense?
100%, and I agree 100. I agree 100% with this. I've actually had this conversation with. I actually had a conversation like this where I feel like I was on the wrong end of the conversation. I was had a conversation with my client, one of my old coaches, kind of a mentor to me, and he saw, Mike Menzer has been on like a bit of a craze as of late on Instagram. So he started talking about he's training his clients with this Mike Menzer style program ish, like a variation. And my initial reaction was a bit like, don't get stuck up on these fucking Instagram things. Like Mike Menzer was, he was a good bodybuilder. He was not the greatest bodybuilder. A million other bodybuilders have done it different ways. Volume. Look at this. I was sending him Brad Schoenfield studies, and then at some point, he brought up a point. He's like, Tony, I teach my clients for 45 minutes because I'm so booked. I don't have time for more. So I do 45-minute classes. Most of the people want to train boxing with me. A few people want to lift weights, but I can't do more than 45 minutes. So I have to get as much as I possibly can. By doing it this way, we're doing one, maybe two sets to a little past what you would say conventional failure is. I'm able to get a lot of results out of these guys. And as he said that to me, I kind of was like, oh yeah, like it doesn't have to It might be it's not the optimal way to do it, but it definitely fits. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Like I was getting a bit dogmatic, and ever since then, I thought about it for myself too. And I was like, I really want to grow my quads. I have chicken legs by nature. I'm like, I'm gonna take some of my sets. Maybe go that little bit. I'm gonna try to hit that wall. I'm gonna try to hit close as I can to failure. Maybe I'm not hitting as much volume, but because my schedule is always so variant, I can actually get a little more work done. And I saw some growth, and I was like, oh, yeah, maybe this isn't the optimal way, but it fits a realistic version of my lifestyle right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it right there. But the problem is that Mike Menzer was not saying, hey, you could do less when you have, like, if you don't care about that extra 5-10%, which I don't care as well. Like, I'm not in the gym doing 25-30 sets per muscle group per week. I'm doing 8 to 12 because I'd rather spend that extra time doing something else. And I really don't care if my, like, delt is slightly bigger, which maybe only I and a couple of freaks would notice. But Mike Menzer was on you need very little to absolutely maximize growth, and doing more will be counterproductive.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When in reality, yeah, you will know if you're overdoing it. Like that's my issue with people being super cautious about training volume. It's like, bro, if you're super sore, performance is regressing, sleep is affected, and you're feeling the fatigue, it's likely that you're doing a lot. But as you said, if you want to get your legs to, like, if your legs are stubborn and you're like, okay, I'm doing X amount of sets per week, and it feels super manageable, adding a bit more may get you more growth. You know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're right on the money here, and I think that was another reason why my initial reaction to him talking about Mike Mesger was because I know he had such strong opinions that were just so extreme and like counter to what mostly I was kind of like, it's too much. But I think that there's gems to be taken from everyone.
For
Um,
sure, and like, and Mike Menzer is an example of like, oh, advanced bodybuilders, and you still have examples of people who are like advanced trainees and they have great physiques and are really strong with low volumes. So when you're using that minimum dose sort of concept, and when you're like, I'm going to drop my training volume and just do as much as I need to get a meaningful response, you can use these anecdotes to sort of calm yourself down and be like, look, if these high level bodybuilders and powerlifters are out there also training with low volumes, and okay, yeah, they may be saying that it's enough to maximize gains, but you, even if you know that it's not, you can still see that they're making great progress. So you can use that to sort of tell yourself, hey, it's fine. Like when I'm on holiday, it's okay that only going to be doing a handful of sets per muscle group per week.
yeah, you actually had a great video on this. I really liked it, where you basically walk through an upper body 30-minute workout.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it was a great video because it showed that, you're not hitting, you're not taking these 2-minute rest periods in between, which, there were things that maybe you weren't like optimal ish,
Yeah.
you would say, but you could see how an effective workout could be constructed in a short period of time. And a lot of people would benefit. A lot of really busy people, they don't go to the gym because they don't think they don't have an hour and a half in their day, or they don't want to spend an hour and a half, and they're like, well, if I can't get that, I'm not going to really grow muscle. It's not worth it. But I think like telling people like, look, you could do a 30-minute workout very effectively, and that's not a cardio, doing a Buddhizer workout and have effective growth. I think I get a lot more people under the barbells, a lot more people using in the gym, and I think it's a very good point to have. Something that people don't talk about enough. I think.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, I think, yeah, maybe doing a leg session in 30 minutes, you'd have to be a bit smart with your exercise selection. And it may be that you will, like, it's idea. It would be better if you did like 40 minutes. With 40 minutes, you could hit all your volume in a week. But going in the gym and being focused for 20 to 40 minutes, in those 20 to 40 minutes, depending on your goal, you could do like legit, like a solid amount of work. Even like, let's say you went in and you only did things with your body weight. If you banged out in like in 20, 30 minutes, think how many dips, push-ups, and chin-ups you could do. So you could do like like, and imagine if you're not like that advanced. So each set of chin ups you're getting like 5 to 10 reps, and then you're supersetting maybe with push ups, or dips, and then like in 10 minutes you could really have an effective workout for your front delts, chest, triceps, biceps, lats, upper back. Sure, it's not like you're gonna be, if you're a competitive bodybuilder and your livelihood depends on being as jacked as possible, yeah, probably that's not going to be enough, and maybe use some machines and whatever. But like even with just that example, myself, I could go in as an advanced trainee and have a really effective workout, without even needing to touch any equipment, like aside from the pull-up bar or and the dip
Yeah.
rings. Yeah, I think a lot of people fall in that trap, and it's that's the message that I'm trying to get across. That like, bro, just like go do something, versus saying, I can't get the maximum in, therefore I'm gonna skip the gym. Same goes with like steps and overall physical activity. Even if you were like, if you look at any data as far as like steps and health goes, just any increase from like going from 2,000 to 5,000 steps a day, which is definitely not a lot of steps, is enough to have an impact on your health. Like if you're unable to get the optimal, like why settle for like almost nothing when you could be at like the 60% mark? You get me?
100%. And I actually suffered with this personally when it came to dieting. So when I was fighting, I had to make 145 pounds in the beginning of my career, and I used to be 265 pounds. So it's quite a big
Yeah.
drop. Uh, but once I got down, my problem was I was so scared of not making the weight that I wanted to be perfect. And the minute I wasn't perfect, and I also didn't. My understanding of nutrition obviously evolved massively, and after I took courses and studied it. But before that, I kind of had like oh my god, I ate a candy bar, and I'd have this like, well, fuck it today. Today, fuck it, and tomorrow I'll be a soldier again. And then what would happen is my willpower, and I think I'm decently strong willed, I don't know David Goggins, but I'm decently strong willed, I fought in a cage for most of my life. So I would fight until I was grinding my gears. I'm exhausted, I'm super tired. And I would be like, fuck it, I eat a chocolate bar, and then I would that's it. Then that day, it's like three pitajiros, the Coke's coming out. It's like, fuck it, we're gonna party Ben and Jerry's afterwards, and it's like, well, today don't count. And I'd be like, here's a 10,000 calorie day, basically canceling the last 3 days out. When if I would have just had a pitajiro and the chocolate bar, I would have been all right. I would have just kept
Yeah.
everything going.
Exactly. Exactly. You would have been like, yeah, one day on maintenance calories. Okay, a bit more. Like the way I always tell clients when they want to have that day, I'm like, look, if you just have the maintenance day, you can. It's so much easier to get back on track because you didn't really fall off. Because like if you're also lifting weights and you have like physique related goals, like a maintenance day at worst allowed you to recover a bit better. And sure, yeah, it slowed down fat loss a bit, but just by a tiny amount. And at the same time, it may allow you to be even more of a soldier for longer periods of time without reinforcing this idea of like up and down and up and down. And I'm gonna study, and I'm not gonna. It's the same like you see it with. I'm pretty sure you've met a lot of people that are like that in their lives, where they're like, oh, I'm gonna do this last weekend binge, where I'll do drugs and I'll drink alcohol, and then I'm gonna be completely sober. And
Yeah.
then they do that for like 2 weeks, and then they binge again instead of just like, okay, I'll have the couple of drinks and have a bit of
Yeah.
fun and have balance.
Yeah, I have a beer here and there. It's no big deal. It's at the end of the world. I see it a lot in every asset. I even see it a lot with work. Like you'll see people that like when they're like they'll jump into something and they're like they're new into business or something and they're like, oh, I'm gonna be on top of every single detail, every single minute, and like week three comes and just like fuck everything for 2 3 days. Then everything piles up and they try to get back into it and it's that
Yeah,
constant yo-yo snowfall, like snowballing effect,
yeah, it's the
compounding
culture.
negatively.
Yeah, exactly, and it's the culture of optimization and like jargon. It's the same like with a lot of other areas in your life. Like it's the basics that are gonna get you there. Obviously, optimizing if you're trying to get to the absolute top, those details can make a difference. So like if you are a CEO of like a huge company and you're trying to like not make it big, but like you're trying to like compete with the biggest
Yeah,
companies in the world, yeah, then small detail. Or like if you're competing at the highest level in sport, yeah, maybe even your mattress, the mattress that you sleep on may make a difference. But like for the majority of people, it's like if you're doing the basics consistently over time, it's very unlikely that you're not going to be very successful. Same goes with like whatever money, diet, training. And I feel that a lot of people now, because you have access to so many, like on social media, you're constantly bombarded with like, okay, the latest app to help you hack productivity, or the latest recovery sort of device that you wear and it tells you what you're supposed to be doing. When in reality, all you need to do is like get your sleep, Make sure you're consistently physically active. Don't eat like an asshole. Eat like plenty of whole foods, and just do that for 20 years. The 20 years part, I feel, is where most people fail. You know,
Yeah. To be honest, I even think if you say 3 years, that's
3
where
years,
people.
yeah,
People, when you,
sure.
I realize most of the clients come to me, so I built a bit of a reputation, and it's kind of how I got into the job that I'm in now, as someone that can help people lose weight fast. Because I had helped a lot of professional fighters lose weight very quickly for their fights. Like I kind of became known as that guy. And the funny thing is, I would preach completely against this, and no one would listen to what anything I said. They would come to me like, "Listen, I got 3 weeks." I'd be like, "Listen, we could do X, Y, Z. It's going to be horrific. It's not going to be good for you. You're probably going to end up binging. You're going to gain all the weight back. Let's take, instead of wait 3 weeks, how about 6 months?" And they're like, "Nah, nah, I want 3 weeks." And I was
Yeah.
like, it takes them to do the 3 weeks, yo-yo back up, kind of realize like, oh man, everything he said is exactly what happened. I should really take this time and do it the right way.
Yeah, it's people don't like that, man. And it's the same with like I feel with the minimum dose stuff. Sometimes you'll see like people not wanting to buy into the idea that look, man, it's the consistency over time that is going to make a difference, not whether you had a couple of weeks where you did 7 sets instead of 25. You know,
Yeah.
like it really doesn't matter. And like show me one person that has been consistently training hard in whatever and hasn't seen solid results. I'm not saying they haven't become a world champion, because there comes a point where just training hard consistently is not enough. But like for the average person that wants to build a solid physique, I think the biggest thing that is missing is consistency.
Well, I'm sure it was the same thing with your studies. I'm sure when you started in your studies and you started in your research, it took time till you became accustomed. You understand you could put everything together and like think logically and critically to the point that you do now. In the beginning,
Hmm.
I'm sure it was hard. You had to stick to it, go through all the difficulties till you get to where you are today.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
agreed.
I'm gonna take a little switcheroo here. I'm gonna little switch the topics. I saw a video of yours recently, and I really liked it. You called it the art of placeboing, and I thought this video was exceptional for multiple reasons. One, you took a topic that I find very interesting. I'm a bit obsessed with placebos. Like I'm always like I couldn't when I first started reading how placebos worked, I couldn't believe it actually was a thing. I was like, "There's no way. What do you mean? Like this isn't real." And I saw
Hmm.
that the placebo effect was real. And I never thought about. I would use placebos in a sense like when I'd fight, I'd kind of hype myself up in some sense, and that was like I would tell myself this narrative, and I almost by the time I walked out I kind of believed that narrative, and it would make things work better. Like if I got hit, I'd be like, I can't go, I'm not, there's no way I can get knocked out. In my head from before, it would give me that belief to fight through. Or maybe I'd be like, oh man, I'm dizzy, I need to hold on for dear life. I'd be like, nah, this is nothing. But when you said it, I was like, man, this is an excellent little trick that can push you through. Because I think not believing in the process is one of the reasons why so many people don't keep training, keep pushing, and like keep going, putting in the right amount of effort. Is because they don't actually believe in the process. They don't trust that it's going to happen. If you could kind of talk yourself up that, you know, you use the chocolate milk example. Like I'm getting the best protein with chocolate milk, low fat chocolate milk possible. I could see that someone was like, if you could talk yourself into believing that that's the truth, and you kept drinking that chocolate milk protein, you are going to get, you're going to get your right amount of protein, you're going to get the calories and grow and so on and so forth.
Exactly. Yeah, the thing with the placebo effect is interesting. Like if you really look into the placebo effect, you see that it's slightly different than what we all have in mind. So it's not as simple as, oh, we told these people have this and then that was they had a sugar pill, and that was able to sort of like cure diseases and so on and so forth. Because like when they've looked at the effect of placebo on like actually altering, let's say, the growth of different cancers, for example, like that hasn't been shown to be the case, but the placebo effect has been shown to work for things like, some acute physiological changes like blood pressure, and even in like the classic study with where they had told people, you're gonna take this insane steroid and it's gonna make your workouts so much better, and in reality they were taking a placebo. They they saw they actually felt like they were taking something. But the whole point of placeboing things is that, like, look, as long as you have an educated approach, an evidence-based approach to whatever you're doing, um, hyping whatever you're doing at the moment a bit more up and sort of placeboing it. For example, as you said, chocolate milk or whatever you're eating. Like, let's say you could placebo your diet as a whole. So you're eating your post-workout meal, and thinking that, oh, I'm getting all my protein in and my vegetables, and for my health, this is great, and this is great for muscle growth. Or when you're going to bed, thinking, I'm gonna get now like 8 hours of solid sleep. I'm gonna put my mask on, and this is like really gonna be it for muscle growth. And same with your sessions. It's in my opinion, at least, like, okay, so we're fully transparent. It's not like we have studies specifically, like we have studies on like visualization and other sort of techniques that can help you sort of adhere to things more. But it's likely, in my opinion at least, that you're gonna have a better time long term and potentially better results if you are to approach things that work, like that there's evidence behind them, with a more positive and hyped up mindset. And you could do that with things where there's like limited evidence available, but you're like where you're not really risking much. So let's say a new training technique comes out. There's a couple of studies on it. We're still not sure. The jury is still out on whether it is really the best thing. But you see that on average, it seems to produce positive results. And worst case scenario, it doesn't make a difference. It's not like you're going to regress. Like saying, oh, I'm going to try these sort of new style repetitions that I saw on this new study. I'm going to try them out, and they're going to be banging. They're going to really give me growth. Like, worst case scenario, they didn't make a difference. Best case scenario, you enjoyed your training a bit more. You stuck to your training a bit more. You trained a bit harder, and you saw gains simply just because you stuck to your training for longer and you trained hard consistently.
Do you use this personally, this technique, when you're doing things?
Yeah, for sure. For years now, like I will do things like every day whenever because I'm very health aware. So like, I track my sleep, I track my waist circumference, I make sure I'm getting like my fiber and my steps every day, and getting in fruits and vegetables, and just like every day, like when I go out for a walk, I'm always telling myself this is great for health. We're like, this is every few steps we're taking is my body is feeling healthy, and this is helping in me staying strong and being healthy long term. Same goes with things like vegetables. Every time I eat vegetables, in my head I'm like, this is amazing for our body. This is doing wonders, and like, make sure you have your vegetables because you're gonna feel better afterwards because you're gonna be thinking about it. Yeah, so I don't know, it makes things more fun, and it sort of allows me to stay on track because I'm constantly giving myself a tap on the back for small things. And obviously, like with vegetables and fiber and steps, we also have really solid evidence that they're good things for you. So then me hyping them up is even easier than if I was to do that with like a new supplement or something.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same. I need to have something that is solidified the idea in some sense before I can get behind it. Like, so if you just told
For
me,
sure.
we're going to do functional fitness and you're going to have the best body ever, I would be like, functional fitness athletes, they look amazing, but like, so do bodybuilders. Like, I need something more than that to get going. I need something like a little more substantial. To That was a terrible example, but generally that's the idea. uh, uh, so yeah, I want to move on to another thing now. You are a coach with Stronger by Science.
Hmm.
I know you're also doing a new business with Milo. But as a coach, how long have you been coaching? What's your experience with, how do you feel your experiences with online coaching? Did you ever do any in person coaching? And how is that
Yeah.
side of your life?
So I've been coaching full time. So like full time. I mean, okay, that depends on everybody's definitions, but like I've worked with hundreds of people over the past few years, from all sorts of professional and athletic backgrounds, from businessmen, doctors. By doctors, I mean fake doctors, so physicians, like and like military personnel, like even like a guy who was a garbage man, as well as like competitive powerlifters, bodybuilders, all sorts of people. And I do not do any in person coaching, only online, because it's not something that I find personally fulfilling, and I think I can have a bit more impact. I can at least work with more people online, whereas if I need to be physically present somewhere, that limits my ability to do other things like travel and network. I've enjoyed coaching quite a bit, but I will slowly be taking a step back from handling as many clients as I transition to other things in my career, which will be announced in the near future. But coaching has allowed me to not only obviously make a living, but to meet a lot of people and sort of collect data informally, at least as an evidence, like in order to be an evidence-based professional and an educator in the field. I do believe that having that actual real world experience with individuals who are trying to get bigger, stronger, even at very high levels, I think that has allowed me to become a better scientist and a better educator. Because it's one thing to be able to communicate what a study has found, and it's a different thing to take that and put it into practice with individuals who have preferences, who can be weird with certain things, who may come from a certain background and may find it difficult to buy into new ideas. And obviously, like, things also get rough. So working with people, and having to guide them through months where stress outside of the gym has picked up, and now training is not going great, but not because they're not doing what they're supposed to do, but rather because their son was sick for 3 weeks and had pneumonia. All those things really make a difference as far as being an evidence-based practitioner goes.
Yeah, I think it's you learn a bit of more of the human element of training as well, because at the end of the day, you are dealing with people, and
Exactly.
I've realized very much that like I would get stuck on this, like especially because I don't come from an academic background. Like I went and got certificates as a nutrition coach and as a personal trainer, and I did a bunch of things, but I don't come from an academic background. So I was fascinated by the academic side of things. Like to me it was like, oh man, we have evidence for the stuff we could do. That's great. Like that now we don't need
Mm-hmm.
to think anymore. Forget all this guesswork. Let's just do what this is. And what I realized, I would get stumped. I would just run into this wall so many times where I was like I have to blend the reality of what's happening with the people that I'm training with what the evidence is telling me and try to get the best approach from both. But you can't just go with one in a real world circumstance.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And that's something that a lot of people on the other side of the spectrum, so the more like the people that do evidence based wrong, who sort of treat evidence based as science or like study based, often forget it's like it may be like when you're actually out there in the field working with people. Let's say let's first look at advanced like athletes. Like there are advanced athletes out there that have their quirks, they have their preferences, they will maybe it's like they have a psychological connection to certain things that they're doing in training, and you need to be like you need to sort of blend, sort of find the middle ground between athlete buy-in and doing what's best for them. Because for a lot of things where we're making, again, like in your world, how many studies do we have on like uh, or in your world, in your previous world, like let's say combat athletes? It's not like you have a ton of studies on a lot of things that these people do. So then you have to draw some from studies and just like exercise science in general, and then take into consideration what other coaches are doing, and then blend that in with, okay, my guy, if I have him do this and this and that, I know that his right knee is going to start bothering him midway. He's going to get angry. He's going to try and muscle through it. And then that may backfire because he's feeling like he's not getting an effective workout. So then maybe doing something that looks a bit more suboptimal on paper gets your athlete to be like, yeah, that was awesome, man. That was a really good workout. My knee didn't bother me whatsoever. And I really could feel that I was more focused. And yeah, that's being truly evidence-based versus trying to force, oh, yeah, but the science says you should do this or you should do that.
Yeah, and a lot of times you'll get things like Jay Cutler used to do like these partial these lengthened partial reps with incline dumbbell press, right? And there's
Yeah.
some study now that's showing that like lengthened partials are good for hypertrophy as well. And in some sense, there I think one of the studies was even showing that it had more benefits in that one study than going full range of motion. And I was like, yeah, like even me as a coach, like I would see guys that would do that. Like some of my clients do that. Like I used to have some, especially some really big guys in Greece. I used to train some big, guys on special supplements, and they loved doing partial reps with like ego lifting. And a lot of times I was like, I would go at them like, no, 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 let's get full range of motion. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but there was something to what they were doing. It wasn't that they were completely wrong, and it showed up later in the evidence.
Yeah. The problem with that is that unless, because like it's resistance training, right? There's only some like there's a few adjustments that you can do that everybody will try at some point.
Yeah,
You'll either cut range of motion at the top. You had people sort of sticking to the middle range. You also had people being super ego lifters and just doing the end range. Like you'd see those quarter squats. But the problem with, because a lot of people will say, oh, the bros had it right. Yeah, like Jay Cutler
no,
used to do it, and it's like, what explanation did Jay Cutler give for that back in the day? It's not like he came and said, look, here's an essay on potential mechanisms and why this may make sense.
yeah,
It was more like many of them. Some were more informed. For example, John Meadows used to, in some ways, would be ahead of his time. But the problem with many of the bros back in the day is that just because they did something without really knowing if that works or not, it doesn't really show that they were ahead of their time, because they didn't really provide much of a rationale for why that thing works better than another thing.
yeah. And that's why it's important not to just listen to people off their word and try to let them give you a rationale, even if they're jacked. Or like I
Yeah,
used to say this with fighting too. I'd have fighters that would come and they'd be like, "Man, this guy's awesome. He told me that I should do my armbar like this." And I'd be like,
yeah,
"What? Why?" And he'd be like, he says it works better. It's like,
yeah,
okay,
exactly.
cool. Why? Like, I'm down. Like, if it works better, let's do it. But why? Why does it work better?
Why?
Yeah. Like that question. I think that's something you got to ask.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so now that I see that you're really growing your content online as well. Can you walk me through that process for you? One, what got you into making content? Was it strictly a business decision, or was it that you wanted to educate, or was it a bit of both? Walk me through that process.
Yeah, I think the honest response is a bit of both. I always wanted to be an educator, and I got into, so I was teaching at university from a young age, from 21 years old. I started doing my first like sort of guest lectures and being an associate lecturer here in the UK, and I've taught like at a couple of UK universities. Still a member of staff at one, but I really liked the. I come from an academic family, and being an educator was something that was close to my heart. But I saw that just being at a university sort of limits your reach, because yeah, it's great to be able to teach the kids the students, because they're not all kids, the students that will come to class and have are doing their degree at the university, but at the same time getting getting out there, you can potentially reach thousands, if not like millions of people. And I was like, from a business standpoint, it makes sense that I'm out there more so that I can do the stuff that I like, because I'm not like a conventional person as far as like schedules go, and so on and so forth, which I can do through coaching. So coaching allows me to be flexible with my schedule. And I was like, okay, I want to educate people. I want to do that on a larger scale. Let's get out there. Let's find ways where we can communicate science, because that's what essentially gives me purpose. And that's the reason I do science. Like, the science side of things, publishing papers and writing papers and conducting studies, as it stands, it's not like it doesn't make me any money directly. If anything, you could argue it somewhat costs money, because
Yeah.
it costs time. But it's very fulfilling, and obviously it allows me to build a certain profile. Like, let's not shy away from the fact that indirectly does help, even though it does so very slowly. And one could argue you could do different things, and nobody cares if if you have a PhD. Many people will not care if you're really publishing studies anymore, as long as you have that title. But me personally, I enjoy looking into things more, and I enjoy the act of collaborating with other individuals and trying to find the best way to run a study, and then running the study, and then like doing a systematic review or a narrative review, or like looking at the literature and then like exchanging ideas. I find that super cool and interesting from a personal standpoint. Yeah, it's not the best idea from a business standpoint, but hey ho, that's why we're doing all the memes and the YouTube videos and the more like sort of Gen Pop friendly content.
So I actually have a question about that. So I'm gonna stick on this. I'm quite interested in it. You have grown your social media following quite quickly. I'm sure there was a long time before, but at some point it definitely blew up as of recently.
Yeah,
I
as of
wonder how
last
much
year, I think.
last year. Yeah, last year it's been. Like I followed you a bit from before. Um, you kind of popped off. I was before you were cool, you know. So, uh, but yeah, you. I saw that you popped off, and I'm like, how much of that? I'm curious. Did you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm doing this now. Here's my strategy of how I'm going to grow my channel, my Instagram, my handles for my business, or was this just organic, completely by accident? We popped on a video of somebody's and it worked out.
Um, I think it was a combination of both. So, one, like, first of all, I started when I got my PhD. I got out there more, because
Yeah.
I was in the shadows as a coach as well. Like, I spent 2 to 3 years coaching for free to get enough training experience as a coach to feel confident in providing services. Because I really did not like the idea of being the DM for coaching sort of coach, because you'd see that a
Yeah.
lot. Like, back in the day, we had this craze where everybody was a coach, and everybody like had credentials for coaching, and everybody would say DM for coaching. So I had spent like a few years behind the scenes, but then when I got my PhD, I thought, okay, it's time to have an Instagram handle where people can find me versus a more personal one, because like my name is difficult to find, and that's where Dr.Pak came from. Because like my
Yeah.
real name is Patroklos. I have two surnames, long Greek surnames. Pak is what everybody calls me, even people in Greece. But Pak by itself is not really doing much. And Dr.Pak, although yeah, it's a bit like it has like a touch of gimmick and like cringe. Like, it's much more easy for people to remember. But at the same time, since the last summer, I did make a conscious effort, and I had also announced that when I finish the PhD that I'll be putting out more content versus posting pictures of me in the gym or like pictures from my holiday, and just being a bit more conscious of what I am posting. And when I started making the memes and sort of finding my format and using the little Wojak characters, that's when things sort of started coming together, because I was able to express myself a bit more through my content, and because I was trying to find something that would allow me to be me, like be funny, be a bit more edgy in some cases, without following the standard sort of format where, hey, infographic, or this is me on a video explaining what you should do for muscle growth. And yeah, it's just one thing brought the other. Obviously, we're also doing a bunch of projects outside of content, like research papers and so on and so forth. And it all came together to, yeah, to what you mentioned.
Well, Pack, honestly, it's been a pleasure. We went 50 minutes. We normally try to keep this to 30 minutes, but I'm really happy we did. I'm happy to have met you, even though we have close contacts from our other life. But thank you so much for being on here. Super interesting, super informative. Anyone know that if they want to reach you, if they were looking for training services, or if they just want to read your memes because they're great, your Instagram handle, anything, you can let them know, and I'm going to tag it in the bottom of the video for YouTube, and I'll tag it on my Instagram as well.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it was awesome chatting with you, and you can just find me on YouTube if you type Dr.Pak, dot Pak. Same for Instagram. And all my links are there on my Instagram. So if you want to read our papers, or you want to listen to any podcasts that I've put out, it's all there for the taking, or for the clicking, or for whatever.
I like it. The clicking, the taking, it's all good. All right, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, man.